Chaos Head is the first visual novel in the science adventure SciADV series, released in 2008. Chaos Head is a psychological science fiction story set in modern-day Shibuya, Tokyo, and explores ideas and concepts of perception, delusions, and the intersections between inner thoughts and reality. The story follows Takumi Nishijo, a shut-in gamer and anime otaku who spends his days living in a shipping container while attending school only as necessary. His life begins to change, however, when he stumbles upon an unusual murder scene, only to be then dragged into a series of serial murder incidents in the city of Shibuya, later known as the New Generation Madness Killings. Chaos Head is characterized by psychological denpa horror. Here, the story shows off the deterioration of mental health, the unreliability of perception, and the fear of losing one's sense of reality. Takumi frequently shifts between real-life events and imaginary self-inflicted delusions, making it difficult for him to distinguish the actual truth. This is illustrated through Chaos Head's gameplay mechanic, the delusion trigger. Throughout the story, the reader can choose whether Takumi sees a positive or negative delusion. Positive hallucinations make him approach the situation from a more optimistic or even escapist perspective, while negative hallucinations make him more paranoid and fearful. Examples of the former include extreme lewd fantasies, while examples of the latter feature horrific, scarring sequences. Both positive and negative hallucinations, as well as choosing not to engage in delusions, are actions that will ultimately affect the story's progression. Chaos Head is notably divisive among readers due to Takumi's extreme otaku shut-in personality and his repulsive, misogynistic, and cringeworthy actions at times. However, it is because of how Chaos Head tackles his extreme behaviors and character arc that some fans, including myself, feel that it elevates the visual novel presentation and story as a whole. Chaos Head later got a re-release in 2009 in the form of Chaos Head Noah. The Noah edition greatly improves the graphics quality, with later ports increasing the visual resolution, as well as adding in 6 new routes to the game. Each route focuses on a different heroine in Chaos Head and provides additional insight into their character, the Chaos Head story, and the broader world building of the SciADV universe. There is a Fandisc canon sequel in Chaos Head Love Choo Choo, which can be seen as an epilogue to the Chaos Head story. The story takes place after the events of the true ending and operates as a gaogay romantic comedy, where the Chaos Head girls have fallen in love with Takumi, all as he attempts to become more sociable. There is an anime adaptation of Chaos Head, however, it is generally not recommended to watch by SciADV fans due to being a rushed adaptation, cutting important scenes and explanations. The Chaos Head Noah visual novel is recommended as the ideal way to experience the story. Note, most if not all of the SciADV titles have highly recommended fan patches that increase the overall quality of life experience for the SciADV games. Benefits include decensored content, typography and UI improvements, translated CGs and backgrounds, subtitled videos, and important bug fixes. Additionally, the site where the patches are hosted also has spoiler-free guides for all of the games. I've added a link in the description for access to these patches. Steins Gate is the second and most well-known entry in the science adventure SciADV series, released in 2009. Steins Gate is a thriller science fiction story set in modern-day Akihabara, Tokyo, and explores concepts of time travel, the consequences of altering the past, and the value of personal responsibility. The story follows Okabe Rintaro, a self-proclaimed mad scientist who spends most of his time in a rented apartment he calls the Future Gadget Laboratory. Along with his friends, Okabe accidentally invents a device capable of sending text messages called D-mails to the past. They begin to experiment, seeing how far they can go with their research. However, their actions have severe consequences, as they've caught the attention of the group known as CERN, an organization who's been sent to retrieve the time machine through any means necessary. Steins Gate is characterized by thriller moments and tension created by severe consequences caused by Okabe's usage of time travel. This is best illustrated through Steins Gate's gameplay mechanic of physically using Okabe's cell phone to send D-mails or make phone calls. Depending on how the reader chooses to respond to these text messages and phone calls, the plot will progress in different directions. Other routes explore alternative outcomes and focus on certain characters. The story in each route emphasizes the emotional toll of time travel and the grave consequences of unexpectedly causing a horrible future. The reader must guide Okabe through increasingly difficult decisions to reach a world line where he can preserve both his relationships and the future. While the main story and routes features arguably the most important world line scenarios, other Steins Gate media explore other possible world line outcomes. Steins Gate received a 24 anime adaptation by White Fox, as well as a movie, Steins Gate: Load Region of Deja Vu. Outside of the widely popular anime adaptation, Steins Gate would also have multiple spin-off manga, light novels, and visual novels, including remakes and reboots. Steins Gate Elite is an updated, fully animated remake of the original visual novel using footage from the anime adaptation, along with newly produced animation. However, Steins Gate Elite is not recommended/cautioned by fans due to it having a reduced script and cutting out internal dialogue from Okabe. Steins Gate also has various spin-off visual novels. My Darling Embrace, a romantic comedy visual novel taking place in a different world line where Okabe builds romantic relationship with other female characters. Linear Bound Phenogram, a collection of scenarios set during and after the original visual novel story, but on different world lines. And Variant Space Octet, a retro-style adventure visual novel that takes place after the true ending of the original Steins Gate. Meanwhile, Steins Gate Reboot is a remake of the original visual novel with completely redrawn artwork, updated story CGs, and emote visuals, all based on the Steins Gate Elite script. There is also a new route added to the game in the form of an adaptation of the Hide of the Dark Dimension drama CD, a Gamma Worldline Moeka route. The developer, Mages, has also announced an upcoming Steins game, which would serve as a thematic sequel to the original Steins Gate and Steins Gate Zero. Its full title has not been announced yet, however it will have the same relationship to those visual novels in the way that Chaos Child is to Chaos Head. Robotics Notes is the third main entry in the science adventure SciADV series released in 2012. Here, the story takes on a more lighter tone on the series franchise, while also focusing its major concepts on robotics and augmented reality. Set in the year 2019 on Tagnamashima Island, Robotics Notes follows a small high school robotics club aiming to build a giant robot based on the fictional anime Gunvero. The club is nearly disbanded with only 2 active members, Kaito Yashio, a boy who enjoys fighting games, and Akio Sanomiya, an energetic robotics enthusiast. While Akio is focused on building the club's replica robot, Kaito secretly investigates a hidden conspiracy when he finds encrypted documents called the Kijima Reports, secret documents authored by a deceased scientist claiming that an impending solar flare will wipe out all life on Earth. While player decisions influence character relationships and unlock side routes, the primary story follows a consistent path leading to a true conclusion. As the reader follows Kaito throughout the story, the reader may activate the phone droid to use the applications installed on Kaito's tablet computer. These applications include the Deludo map, a map application, Twipo, a social networking application in which the player can reply to other characters' posts, and Irilo, an augmented reality image recognition application in which the reader can use to examine the environment and information tagged on characters or objects. The story builds its slow slice-of-life tone in the early hours. As the Kijima Reports are uncovered, the narrative shifts into a suspenseful sci-fi story involving global conspiracies. However, while this overarching plotline is a notable part of the story, a large amount of focus and charm lies in the interpersonal development of the Robotics Club members. It's through these character moments that Robotics Notes shines as a coming-of-age story about passion, ambition, and dreams. Robotics Notes later got a re-release in the form of Robotics Notes Elite, which adds new features, remodeled characters, and animated scenes. The visual novel was also adapted into a 22-episode anime series by Production IG, as well as a manga illustrated by Kenji Asakawa. Chaos Child is a direct sequel to Chaos Head and the 4th main entry in the science adventure SciADV series released in 2014. Here, the visual novel builds on the foundation of Chaos Head's themes of delusion versus reality, while also discussing the rising influence of online mass media and how opinions are virally shared and spread among people. Taking place 6 years after the events of Chaos Head, Takeru Miyashiro investigates a murder case with his friends in his school's newspaper club. However, he figures out very quickly that this particular death was only the first in a series of odd killings that would mark the return of the New Generation Murders, an unusual serial murder incident that plunged the city of Shibuya into a frenzy back then. It is very highly recommended to read Chaos Head before Chaos Child. Through the murder investigation, Chaos Child also discusses the influence of mass media technology like social media and online forums, where information, discussions, and opinions rapidly spreads. It shows how people engage with online information, choosing to believe in what's presented to us or choosing to reject it, regardless if it's truthful or not. This is taken into consideration given Takeru's stubborn desires to find the truth and his complication for when the discovered truth runs counter to his own beliefs. Like in Chaos Head, Chaos Child continues the use of the delusion trigger system, allowing readers to influence Takeru's perspective through the story. Choosing between positive and negative delusions will affect his perception on what he sees. Positive hallucinations make him approach events with an escapist perspective, while negative hallucinations hallucinations make him more paranoid and fearful, both very similar to Chaos Head. The game includes multiple branching routes, each focusing on a different heroine. These routes offer deeper context about their inner trauma and individual life experiences. Readers must complete all character routes before unlocking the true ending, which reveals the real truth within Chaos Child. Chaos Child also has a side story prequel manga, Chaos Child Children's Collapse, that focuses on Mio Kunosato and her life before the events of Chaos Child. This includes the time when Mio comes under Kurusu Makuse's tutelage. There is a 12-episode anime adaptation of Chaos Child, along with an additional 13th episode named Chaos Child Silent Sky, which covers the true ending. Like with Chaos Head, there is a fan-disc sequel called Chaos Child Love Choo-Choo that returns back to the events of Chaos Child as a parody Gaogay romantic comedy. Here, the story shows a newspaper club choosing to ignore Takuru's investigations and decides to cover high school trends instead. The club creates a questionnaire test, with Takuru being the first to answer them. Depending on the answers, the story will branch into different routes following a particular heroine. Lastly, there is a light novel called Chaos Child Children's Revive, which takes place 6 months after the events of the main story. Here, the light novel contains character-focused chapters on each of the girls in the main cast, regarding the aftermath of the events and how they plan to move forward, serving as a final send-off for the series. Occultic 9 is the 5th main title in the science adventure SciADV series, released in 2014. Originally published as a light novel written by Chiyomaru Shikura, Occultic 9 focuses around the concept of the supernatural and the occult. The story is set in modern-day Tokyo and follows a group of young individuals connected through a supernatural discussion blog called Kiri Kiri Basara, run by Yuta Gamon. Yuta initially uses the blog to mock paranormal claims, but events quickly spiral into a serious mystery after he gets involved in a supernatural conspiracy tied to the mysterious 256 incident, an event involving the mass suicide of 256 people at a local park. Occultic 9 discusses the intent of scientifically proving the occult through Yuta's attempts at trying to debunk the paranormal. Through this, he ends up bringing together 8 other strangers in the process, seemingly tied by fate. While the story begins with Yuta as the main focus, the story often switches perspectives between the other characters, each one telling their own part in this interconnected story. Originally, Occultic 9 was presented as a title completely separated from the mainline SciADV entries, but it was later adjusted to be part of the main series. Occultic 9 currently has 3 published light novels, the last installment being released in 2017, with plans for a 4th volume. However, the creators have placed the light novel series on an indefinite hiatus. Occultic 9 also has a manga adaptation illustrated by Ganji and an anime adaptation by A1 Pictures. The visual novel adaptation would also be released in 2017 with an incomplete conclusion. A DLC to fully resolve the visual novel story, titled Occultic 9 New World, was planned for the Nintendo Switch. Unfortunately, Chiyomaru Shikura officially confirmed that these plans have been cancelled in a 2022 livestream. He stated that if he were to revisit Occultic 9, it would be via a potential Occultic 9 Elite, a remake similar to Robotics Notes Elite. Out of all of the adaptations, only the anime and manga are fully complete. It is important to note that all versions of Occultic 9 are different in their own unique way story-wise, and all adaptations are considered canon. Steins Gate Zero is a sequel and narrative counterpart to Steins Gate, released in 2015. Rather than continuing the original's true ending, it explores a divergent world line where Okabe Rintaro gives up on pursuing the ideal timeline. Traumatized by repeated time travel and personal loss, Okabe abandons his mad scientist persona and attempts to live a normal life as a student. However, the consequences of time travel don't disappear, and he is drawn back into a global conflict where he must prevent the worst possible dystopian future. And at the center of it all is Project Amadeus, an advanced AI based off of Kurusu Makise. Steins Gate Zero shifts its scientific focus from time travel to artificial intelligence and digital consciousness. The central technology presented here is Amadeus, a project that digitizes memories to simulate a person's behavior and responses to use as a basis personality, with one of its first test cases being an AI version of Kurusu Makise. The tone is notably darker than the original Steins Gate story, due to focusing on Okabe's struggle with PTSD and feelings of loss and guilt. Project Amadeus makes this especially noteworthy in terms of using AI and AI sentience as a coping tool. Similar to the original Steins Gate, the story changes depending on whether or not Okabe contacts and answers phone calls from Amadeus Kurusu. While each route is self-contained, completing all of them is necessary to understand the complete narrative and reach the true ending. The story eventually leads to events that serve as the important missing pieces of the original Steins Gate visual novel and the original timeline. Steins Gate Zero is the sequel, or interquel to be more precise, to Steins Gate, and unlike how you could read Chaos Child before Chaos Head without missing too much context, Steins Gate Zero requires that you have first completed the predecessor. Mages would eventually announce Steins Gate Zero Elite, an updated version of the game which adds full animation, similar to Steins Gate Elite. However, it is not currently known when the game is expected to release. Steins Gate Zero also received a 23 anime adaptation by White Fox. Robotics Notes Dash is the sequel to the Robotics Notes visual novel, released in 2019. Set shortly after the events of the first game, the story continues to deepen character development and relationships while also reintroducing a new high-stakes conflict involving a new global-scale threat. The story takes place on Tanegashima Island in 2020, 6 months after the resolution of the events in Robotics Notes. The Robotics Club members, both former and current, have moved on and are pursuing new goals. However, they are pulled back into another crisis when strange incidents begin occurring all over the island. Like in its predecessor, Robotics Notes Dash continues the use of the phone droid to allow readers to visit various locations around the island. This also serves as the trigger for specific character routes. While multiple character routes and endings allow for the exploration of different perspectives, the true route concludes the story of Robotics Notes. While the visual novel continues to build on its sci-fi concepts and themes from the first game, Dash places more emphasis on its connections to the broader SciADV universe directly, through the involvement of Daru Hashida, a character from Steins Gate who has traveled to the island on a secret mission. The story narrative continues to blend slice-of-life moments with escalating tension of the ongoing conflict. It begins with showing the everyday life on the island, including summer festivals and Robotics Club reunions, but over time, the cast uncovers a hidden conspiracy involving artificial delusion technology from Chaos Head. That said, Robotics Notes Dash still maintains its focus on slice-of-life oriented, character-driven storytelling, showing how the cast grows personally within their individual routes. Anonymous Code is the 6th main entry in the science adventure SciADV series, released in 2022. Here, the story explores advanced computing, digital simulation theory, and philosophical questions about world layer realities, all in an action-packed adventure featuring young hackers. The story is set in 2037, following the 2036 problem, a catastrophic Y2K36 overflow that crippled global computing systems and plunged civilization into chaos. The reader follows Polon Takioka, a skilled hacker for hire and a member of the anonymous group dedicated to helping people, as he discovers an extraordinary power when he rescues a girl named Momo from armed soldiers: the ability to save and load. This power allows him to save and load moments in time, like in a video game, allowing him to predict and alter future events. However, Polon isn't alone in predicting world events. Powerful organizations and individuals wield Earth simulators, advanced technology capable of reconstructing past events and predicting the future. The most prominent one is Gaia, an Earth simulator designed to predict the future of the Earth itself, and thus Polon must use his new abilities to stand against those who seek to manipulate humanity's future. The game follows a primarily linear progression broken by meta-level interventions, where Polon uses the save/load mechanic to alter outcomes to get out of troublesome situations. These decision points are critical and symbolic, reflecting the reader's influence over narrative progression. The visual novel extends this even further by analyzing larger concepts such as the metafiction nature of the story, exploring the bridge between fiction versus reality, determinism, and the role of the observer. A crucial aspect of Anonymous Code is how its major ending revelations reshape readers' understanding of certain key elements in the Steins Gate story. The game reveals new information about important concepts like reading Steiner, memory to data conversion, and the divergence meter. These ending revelations also extend into other installments of the SciADV series as well. Anonymous Code is the very first entry in the SciADV series to feature a full English dub. Anonymous Code offers a different experience from the previous SciADV entries due to being a more action-packed sci-fi title compared to the others. If you're interested in another visual novel explained video like this, check out this video over here. I would like to thank everyone on Patreon for supporting me in covering visual novels. You guys are fantastic, and if you would like to be a part of that effort in supporting visual novel content, please consider subscribing.